So I guess for starters, I want to welcome everyone. I'm really glad that you're here. Today we're going to be interviewing Maya van Rossum, founder of Green Amendments for the Generations, which is a grassroots nonprofit organization inspiring the nationwide movement to secure constitutional recognition and protection of environmental rights in every state and ultimately at the federal level. Today we're going to be talking specifically about New Jersey. And you may also know Maya as the Delaware River Keeper, leader of the watershed-based advocacy organization, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, for over 25 years. So the first thing that I want to do is maybe just have our team members introduce themselves, and then we can get started with the trailer and then the Q&A. So, yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Arushram Pali and I'm policy leader at Bye Bye Plastic Bags at New Jersey. And like Ava said, we're really glad that you all were able to make it and we hope you enjoy the event.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining this session about the Green Amendment. I'm Purva, I'm a senior in high school and I lead the Bye Bye Plastic Bags New Jersey team. But before we get into learning about the Green Amendment, I just wanted to give a quick introduction of our organization, Bye Bye Plastic Bags New Jersey. Bye Bye Plastic Bags is a global movement of youth raising awareness about the impacts of plastic pollution, and really we're working to ban single-use plastics with a focus on plastic bags across the world. So by educating young people about plastic pollution, giving them a platform to get involved with, and sharing how they can be leaders for change, we aim to help students take their futures into their own hands. So currently, Bye Bye Plastic Bags New Jersey is a team of around 22 youth leaders and environmental advocates. And we really hope to continue to grow this organization. And we promote environmental awareness through presentations at libraries, schools, public events, fairs, and now, due to the pandemic, we are running this webinar series open to anyone interested in joining. We also advocate for environmental policy here in New Jersey, which is why we're really excited to have Maya and the Green Amendment for the Generations to continue to support them. It's okay. We plan to continue to support the efforts for a Green Amendment. We also have a petition on Action Network that we encourage you to join. There is more information and an introduction to the petition site, and I can paste a link in the chat right now.
Oh, and one more quick thing I wanted to mention. While we're doing this, if everyone could mute themselves, that would be really awesome. There's a little icon in the bottom corner of your screen that will let you mute yourself. So.
Yeah, so like I said, I posted the link to the petition in the chat. So because plastic pollution is a systemic problem, along with any individual actions that we might take, it's really crucial that we together push forward legislation to ban single-use plastics in New Jersey. So currently, bill number A1978 still hasn't been voted on by the State Assembly. And this is really our chance to channel people power and show that New Jersey residents support this bill. It would ban the provision of sale of single-use plastic bags in New Jersey and polystyrene foam food service products as well. It would also limit the provision of single-use plastic straws and appropriate money from Clean Communities Program Fund for public education. So along with this, I'm gonna paste another link to some more information about Bye Bye Plastic Bags New Jersey and the global movement, as well as ways you can reach out to us and join the team.
All right, great. So with that, Maya and Colleen, do you want to introduce yourselves really quick and then we can play the trailer?
I'll let Colleen go first.
Hi everyone, my name is Colleen Burns and I work full-time at Green Amendments for the Generations. I'm really excited to be here, especially engaging with this amazing student chapter of Bye Bye Plastics. I'll take it to Maya.
Great. So I think, Ava, you did such a beautiful job introducing me. I don't really need to say anything more. I just want to thank you, and I want to thank Purva, and I want to thank Arush for this amazing program and opportunity, and also for the amazing work on Bye Bye Plastic Bags. It's such a crucial issue, and you're doing such a phenomenal job. So thank you for that. And for those, now Ava gave me a beautiful introduction, but this is my face. I'm Maya van Rossum.
All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is take a look at the trailer of their PBS special. Here's the story of the Green Amendment, which showcases Maya's journey to spark a Green Amendment movement across the US. And it really spotlights all of these really incredible initiatives that the Green Amendment would do. I don't know, that wasn't really proper English, but you get the idea. It's so this PBS special trailer we're gonna play now.
People of Pennsylvania woke up to the fact that they've been raped by the coal companies and steel companies and railroad. Their landscape, their environment had been ravished and exploited bitterly. They kind of like a sleeping giant, the people woke up and said enough is enough.
You got the largest law firms hired by big companies trying to literally obliterate families.
We talk far less than we should about the environmental impacts in underserved communities. We want to be just as committed to the environment in an urban community as we are in the great vistas of our state.
The right to pure water, clean air, and a healthy environment are inherent and indefeasible rights. These are rights that don't just belong to the people here today, but they belong to all the future generations yet to come.
Our whole world is our environment.
Are you concerned about the environment?
Very much, yes.
This is a heavy industrial activity that you're allowing to occur in the backyards of families, next door to schools, next to malls. And you're giving that industry, a heavy industry that has a huge climate and environmental impact, carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want, wherever the hell they want, whenever they want, with protections.
We are having to do the work of continuing to hold that industry accountable for their insults and assaults on the environment and on communities.
And we looked at it, and we looked at our Constitution. We said pretty clearly that you overstepped the bounds. You know, you took away people's rights. So I wrote this 156-page opinion that said you got to go back and do it right.
The court had given life to the Environmental Rights Amendment for the first time. So it was it was very exciting.
I think I felt it for a moment. And then it was really like, okay, now what do we do with this?
You know, in the state of Pennsylvania, they actually have a green amendment that ensures that Pennsylvania residents are entitled to clean air, clean water, and healthy environment. What do you think about that as an idea?
It's a good idea.
Clean water, clean air, uncontaminated land, all of those things should be guaranteed in the Constitution.
We need justice for everybody in every community, and we're not going to get there unless it's recognized by the state through the Green Amendment.
We're all beings. We all live on this planet together. Now we can either sit back and ignore that fact and let the world crash and burn, or we can do something about it and live together peacefully.
The fact is, seeing these millions of younger people are making a valid point, and we older people can pay attention to it and get moving with it.
We are the first generation who will experience climate change, but we're also the last generation who will be able to do something about it.
I don't want to just exist. I want to be able to live.
But the next thing that we want to do is have a Q&A session with Maya. And Arush is going to be taking over, kind of interviewing. And then if any of you guys also want to type questions in the chat, you're welcome to. You can also say in the chat, like, if you want to ask a question aloud, but just don't unmute yourself until you have, until you've indicated that you want to ask a question. So with that, Arush, you can take over.
So Maya, like Ava said, we're glad to have you with us today. I know she touched on many of the gains that your movement has made thus far. Is there anything you would like to add about yourself or your environmental work?
Well, I really appreciate that question. I always feel like the most important thing for people to know about me and about this effort to get green amendments added to the Bill of Rights section of every state constitution across the nation, and ultimately at the federal level, that recognize and protect the rights of all people to pure water and clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. This notion that we need this new, most powerful protection in our state and federal constitutions is an outgrowth of my over 26 years of work as an environmental advocate and leading an organization that does environmental litigation. And it is through all those years of work that I have come to realize and recognize that our current system of environmental protection laws is truly failing us, and that we need something better. And I truly believe that something better is giving people a constitutional right to a healthy environment that is on par with all those other fundamental freedoms we hold dear, like the rights to free speech and freedom of religion.
Right. I know you touched on this a bit, but in plain and simple terms, what exactly is a Green Amendment?
Perfect question. So think about it, right? Right now, if you say to somebody, you have the right to free speech, or you have the right to freedom of religion, you have civil rights, private property rights, you even have the right to bear arms, right? You realize you have those rights because the Bill of Rights section of our constitutions recognize those inalienable rights of all people and protects them, and ensures that those rights are protected equitably for all the people in the state where you have those rights, or across the nation. Well, what a Green Amendment does is it does the same thing, but for the environment. And it is an amendment that gets added again to the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution. And it says that all the people, including future generations, have an inalienable right that must be protected by all levels of government in the state to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. And because of the way the Green Amendment is written, and because of where it is placed, it protects those environmental rights as powerfully as we protect those other human, civil, and political rights we hold dear that are already in the Bill of Rights section of our Constitution.
And I know that the majority of us is probably tuning in from New Jersey. So could you talk a little bit about the specific environmental issues specific to New Jersey that a Green Amendment would address?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing I want to assure people is, while New Jersey is one of the states that may talk about the environment in its constitution, it doesn't have a Green Amendment. It doesn't have the kind of provision I described in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution. In fact, there are only two states that have that kind of provision, and that's Pennsylvania and Montana. Now, really, a Green Amendment addresses everything, touches on everything when it comes to the environment. So right now we have communities in New Jersey, for example, who are suffering from contamination of their drinking water by per and polyfluoroalkyl chemicals. People may have heard of them as PFAS, PFAS, PFOA, PFNA. It's a man-made family of chemicals that was allowed to get into the environment because of a lack of laws to prevent their misuse, to prevent them actually entering the environment. Now, through advocacy in the state of New Jersey, we have been successful actually in getting New Jersey to be on the leading edge of putting in place drinking water protections when it comes to this family of chemicals. But it took us many, many years of advocacy, particularly through the Christie administration, to try to get the state of New Jersey, despite the facts, despite the science, despite the recognition of how dangerous this chemical was and how many people in New Jersey were being impacted by drinking water contamination. It took us many years to do that. If we had had a Green Amendment recognizing and protecting the right to pure water, clean water, then it would have been a lot easier, rather than having to do advocacy to convince the Christie administration to listen to the science and do the right thing. We actually could have used the Constitution to force them to do the right thing. There are many contaminated sites across New Jersey that need to be cleaned up, where government is not acting fast enough to clean up things like TCE and other contaminants in the environment. A Green Amendment can help spur, or if necessary, force the government to act when they are failing to act. If you've got a community like our urban communities, Camden and Newark are well recognized, right, for having so much air pollution that it is not just damaging the quality of our air and the environment, but it's damaging people's health. It's actually damaging the capacity of children to learn when they're in school. And yet we still have agencies that are permitting new industrial operations to go into these urban areas, or rerouting truck traffic to drive right through people's communities, spewing their air pollution. If we had a Green Amendment in New Jersey, then when those fatal decisions were being made that were inflicting so much harm on people, their environment, and their health, we could use the Green Amendment to help secure better decisions. Ideally, just through advocacy, just by using the Constitution and reminding that our government officials, reminding them that they have a constitutional duty to protect our environmental rights. But if they fail to listen, then ultimately by going to the court. So those are just a few examples of the kinds of ways a Green Amendment can be helpful. Actually, in this, one other really on point for bye-bye plastics in New Jersey is actually in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania legislature passed a law that prohibited local communities from putting in place bans on single-use plastic bags. And Governor Wolf, relying on Pennsylvania's Green Amendment, vetoed that piece of legislation in order to maintain the right of local communities to regulate and actually ban single-use plastic bags. So, it touches every aspect of the environment and environmental protection in a variety of different ways. And those are just a very few of the examples as to how.
I know you touched on this briefly in your answer, but aside from aiding environmental advocacy efforts and addressing specific environmental issues in our community, how would a Green Amendment improve the everyday lives of New Jersey residents?
Mm-hmm. Well, it improves the everyday lives because it does allow us to have a pathway to take on the environment. Right now, if our legislators pass a law or regulators pass a regulation or issue a permit where if they pass a regulation or issue a permit that complies with a law that the legislature has passed and the governor has signed, there's sort of little that the people can do about it to protect themselves, right? Because it's complied with a duly passed piece of legislation. But if you have a Green Amendment is above the law. It's above all government. And so we can appeal to the Constitution to take on those threats and challenges. But it also has an impact on people in terms of their hearts and their minds and how they feel about their environment. Right now, when our government officials approve another highly polluting industrial operation or something that will impact our environment, and they do so in compliance with the law, what do people do? They feel sad and angry and upset and let down. and then they're forced to sit down and shut up because they have no other option. But when you have a constitutional right, you don't have to sit down and shut up because you realize and recognize that you truly have a right to these things, and you feel indignant and you feel angry and you feel empowered to rise up and battle on to protect your environment and protect your communities, because no longer are you hoping and wishing that your government officials will do the right thing. You actually now know that you have a constitutional right to these things, and so you are empowered. You are empowered to demand better from your government. It will also impact how people think about who they're going to elect to office, right? Because every single person running for office, new candidate, incumbent, should be asked the question, what do you think about me having a right to clean water and clean air? And the answer should inform your decision on who you're going to vote for. So it really, I mean, it's a transformational shift in how we think about water and air and the environment. They are no longer just lovely things to have or things that we hope for, but they are truly recognized as inalienable constitutional rights that we are entitled to. And so it just transforms our relationship with the environment and our government officials when it comes to environmental decision making.
So a Green Amendment would not only empower environmental agencies in these sorts of decisions, but they would also empower the people.
Exactly. You are absolutely right. And I think that that's such a great point that you made. In the first instance, what a Green Amendment should do, right, is inspire, support, encourage our government officials to be more proactive when it comes to environmental protection, to do the right thing before we even have to ask them for it. But when our government officials fall down on the job and get it wrong, a Green Amendment turns the power over to the people to seek to enforce a better environmental outcome. So I think that that's perfect, the way you asked that question and made clear that there are two pieces, government and the people. Government goes first, but when they mess up, then the people get to step in.
Absolutely.
So
And
Arush, can I interject really quick?
Absolutely.
So I think that this kind of ties into what you were saying about Camden, and also how you were saying that Green Amendments really empower the people. So today, I was on Instagram, and I recently followed the Green Amendments Instagram, which if you aren't following and you're on Instagram, go follow it. And so today they posted something about sacrifice zones. And I thought that that was a really interesting concept, something I hadn't really thought about before. So can you explain kind of what it means to live in a sacrifice zone, and what risks those communities face specifically, and how that ties into environmental justice and all of the racial issues that are so at the forefront of society right now?
So I thank you for that wonderful plug for Instagram. Our team has been working very hard to use that method of communication to help deliver important ideas like this. And of course, we also have Facebook and Twitter, so you could go there too. But yeah, sacrifice zones, it's powerfully sad language, but unfortunately, it's part of our reality. The way our government operates, and empowered to operate this way by the laws that we have on the books, is they consistently and routinely decide that they will sacrifice communities of color, Black communities, brown communities, Native American communities, by foisting more and more pollution and degradation and highly polluting industrial operations on those communities, further and further degrading their environment. And they do that because they feel like, okay, well, those communities have already been sacrificed. Their air is already ruined. Their water is already ruined. But more importantly, they don't have that much political power. Because they are communities of color. And that is a sad, sad state of affairs here in the United States of America. And so our government officials just consistently sacrifice them to more and more environmental degradation in order to protect the richer, whiter communities that perhaps do have more access to the levers of power, do have more money. And so that's our sad reality, right? We are sacrificing the environments, and then not just the environments, but the health, the quality of life, the property values of those communities of color in order to constantly and consistently protect the richer, whiter folks that live somewhere else. And we can see, that this is part of our, the environmental or the justice battles that we are seeing so rightly play out, here in the United States of America, right? We hear and see people, Black Lives Matter, Native American communities, brown communities, advocating for a change in policing strategies, because right now policing operates in a way that is very abusive towards our communities of color. We are hearing how communities of color have less access to education, to good quality food, to health care. And on the same plane, hopefully people are now also understanding, and what we're trying to talk about is that environmental justice is part of that same sad state of affairs here in the United States of America, that we continue to sacrifice these communities also environmentally. And so they are more susceptible to things like COVID and to the ravages of the climate crisis, to flooding and flood damages and other impacts. If we had a green amendment, we start to change that. We can't have environmental sacrifice zones anymore, because now all of the people, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their immigrant status, regardless of their income level, regardless of where they live, they all have the same constitutional right to a healthy environment. And every government official at every level of government becomes duty bound to protect all the people equitably under the Constitution. And playing out this scenario of environmental sacrifice zones actually becomes unconstitutional under a Green Amendment, and becomes a powerful way to stop that abuse of power in New Jersey and in other states where we have a Green Amendment.
Thank you for that, that great answer. There's one quick question from Charles in the chat, and then I will turn it back over to you, Arush. So New Jersey has a record number of Superfund sites that still need cleanup. Will a Green Amendment help clean up efforts?
Such a great question, and I have a perfect example that we're pursuing in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania has its own story about its Green Amendment, but long story short, Pennsylvania really has only had a living, thriving Green Amendment for the last 6 or 7 years. So we're just now being able to get the benefits of having this kind of constitutional provision, which is why you still see bad things happening in Pennsylvania, like fracking. But amongst the things that the people of Pennsylvania experience, just like New Jersey, are contaminated, hazardous sites. And there is one specific example. I actually talk about it in the book, The Green Amendment. It's a site known as the Bishop Tube site. And the Bishop Tube site is super saturated with TCE, trichloroethylene, a known carcinogen, and very can be very harmful to human health and to the environment. The TCE saturates the soils. It's contaminating the groundwater. It's contaminating a neighboring stream, what's known as an exceptional value stream in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And it has a pollution plume that's spread more than a mile away from the site. The Department of Environmental Protection in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has known about the toxic condition of this site since at least the mid-1980s. And yet they have done nothing meaningful to clean it up. So one of the first cases that we brought after we successfully gave legal life to Pennsylvania's Green Amendment was a challenge to the Department of Environmental Protection for their failure to address the toxic contamination condition at the Bishop Tube site. And we are having amazing success. DEP actually tried to get the case dismissed by saying, well, listen, we didn't take any action. We didn't do anything proactive to violate the Green Amendment. You can't hold us accountable for doing nothing. And the court said, no, we can. Inaction is action. when it comes to a constitutional violation like this. And so the case is carrying on, but every time the court has had to make an interim decision, they've sided with us. And so I think the same thing would happen in the state of New Jersey. If we have these toxic sites and we can demonstrate that government has been aware of the toxic contamination and has been taking no meaningful action to address them, that we can characterize that as being a violation of the Green Amendment and spur government in New Jersey to proactively start to clean up these sites. And really, it will only take one successful case, one successful precedent to get DEP in New Jersey to say, you know what, we don't want to keep battling this in the courts. We're just going to be proactive and positive and start cleaning up these sites of our own accord.
Thank you, Maya, for that wonderfully thorough answer. Going a bit into the legal side of things, what is the legal course of action to amend a state's constitution?
So every state has a different pathway and a different process. I mean, many of them are similar, but there are a lot of nuances. But here in the state of New Jersey, what we need is we need the New Jersey legislature to propose through legislation that the Constitution be amended. And then one of two things has to happen. Either the Assembly and the Senate need to, by majority vote, approve that legislation. But they have to do it twice through two successive legislatures, right? And so you have to have that vote happen twice, majority vote. And then it would go before the people, for the people to decide. Or the other opportunity is you could have each of the houses vote in support of the addition of the Green Amendment to the Constitution. And if each of the Assembly and the Senate approve that proposal by a 3/5 vote or better, then you only have to have that vote happen once. And then the amendment can go before the people to decide whether or not they want to have it through the next election, to decide whether or not they want to have it ended or added to the Constitution. And so actually in the state of New Jersey, we actually have legislation that proposes to amend New Jersey's Green Amendment or New Jersey's Constitution to add a Green Amendment. Over half of the Assembly has sponsored or co-sponsored the proposal. Less sponsorship on the Senate side, but still robust sponsorship. It is bipartisan. We have bipartisan support as well. So now what we really need is we need New Jersey's government officials to put this proposal forth for hearings on the Assembly side and on the Senate side, and then to put it before both houses to see whether or not they will vote in support. And that's, of course, where all the people come in to play, to make sure that their government officials are doing that in a timely fashion. Because right now, the Green Amendment in New Jersey has been out there since 2017. Since 2017, and we still haven't had a vote. So we need the legislators to view this as the powerful priority that it should be.
And as far as citizen support goes, what progress has the movement made in New Jersey communities thus far?
So when there was a hearing before the Senate Environment Committee, we had an amazing outpouring of organizations and individuals literally in the hearing room standing in support of the Green Amendment. And while the industry was there in opposition, none of them wanted to testify because they frankly could see how ridiculous they would look standing against the right of the people to clean water and clean air. We have thousands of New Jersey residents that have signed on in our petition of support. If you go to www.njgreenamendment.org, there is a petition there. You can sign in support of New Jersey's Green Amendment. If you're part of an organization or any sort of entity, you could sign on. There's an organizational sign-on letter. And you could go to your local town council, right? Or your county freeholders and urge them to pass a resolution in support of a New Jersey Green Amendment. That resolution strategy is just now advancing. I know that Ava's group is working very hard at the student level to try to inspire students to ask their town councils to pass resolutions. Bye Bye Plastics here in New Jersey, you're helping to inspire and encourage people to sign on in support. And it's that kind of engagement that will turn the tide and make the difference. So as people become aware, they become inspired, they become engaged. But if we want to have a vote by the New Jersey legislature that would allow us to vote in New Jersey on adding a green amendment in the November 2021 election cycle, then we either need 2 votes where you have a majority vote, one in 2020 and then again in 2021, or we need to have a single vote in 2021 where the legislatures vote by a 3/5 majority. So we still have time, but we need the people to goose along the legislators to really start thinking about this concept and idea and making a decision on whether or not they believe in it.
And Maya, you talked a little bit about this, but I think I need to ask the most important question of this call. How can young people take action to help the Green Amendment movement?
So
I see we got a question like that in the chat. Faith asks, how can I get my town to ban plastic bags, styrofoam takeout containers, and single-use straws?
So both of them, I think, right, are a little bit of the same, but you all will be better at answering the question about the plastic bags. So how about I answer on the Green Amendment and then you answer on the plastics question. So on the Green Amendment front, you know, again, signing on to the petition yourself, getting your parents to do it, getting your family, your friends, your community members. The more we have people sign on to the petition and support, the more we can demonstrate to the legislators that it is to their benefit to be thinking about and advancing this idea. If you have a student organization or you are part of an organization of any kind, get that organization to sign on to the organizational sign-on letter, right? That also becomes a powerful demonstration of support. And when it comes to your local town council, you know, take it upon yourself to go to your local, you know, whatever it's called in your town, right? Every town's a little different, but go to the council meeting, the supervisors, go to your county freeholders and tell them about this idea and ask them if they will pass a resolution in support. Because the resolution from a town council member, right, isn't just the town speaking, but it's the town speaking on behalf of all their people, and it sends a powerful message. Now, we at Green Amendment for the Generations will help you. So if you're like, well, I want to go ask my local government to pass a resolution, but I'm not quite sure what to say. Well, we can give you information on what to say. We could give you handouts that you could give to your government officials, or we could join you at that meeting. You could do part of the presentation and I could do part of the presentation, or you could do the whole presentation and I'll just be there to help answer any questions that might come up, right? So we can do it in partnership. So, you know, however it is you feel about this, you know, your comfort level with speaking out to your local town council, we will be there to help support you in advancing it in that way.
All right, so I'd like to turn the Q&A over to the audience now. I brought it before. Faith asks, how can I get my town to ban plastic bags, styrofoam takeout containers, and single-use straws? Well, our organization, Bye Bye Plastics Bags New Jersey, is focused on doing exactly that. Our main mission is to have a statewide plastic ban for all of New Jersey, and yeah.
And Purva gave some really good instructions in the chat too that can also help answer that question. So.
And I want you to know, this is glass, this is metal, right? So I got no plastic going on here. And as you can see, I'm getting increasingly hot as the day goes on because we choose in our household not to run the air conditioner. I have an all solar house and geothermal in the ground, and the house is all electric because we don't want to be dependent on any fracked gas, right, or fossil fuels to the greatest degree possible, which of course is an important ingredient in plastics, right? So we don't want to be any part of supporting that industry. So while you might be saying, oh my gosh, why is she getting so sweaty? Well, it's really hot and steamy outside. And all my doors are open and I got a ceiling fan going on and that's about it. But I think that that's also just part of this. I say all that to make the point that we need government to do the right thing, and we need to shut down industry, right? And we need to change path when it comes to plastics, when it comes to energy and our energy strategies. And the most important things that we can do is demand that our government do a better job and that we help change the industries that we support and advance. But there is, of course, also that part that we can all do in our everyday lives, making those choices every day. If you're really, really thirsty, but you don't have a reusable cup, wait till you get home to get a glass of water, right? Don't buy that plastic water bottle or buy that cup of coffee. So that's also, of course, part of the solution. But I wanted you to all know why I'm getting really hot and sweaty here.
Faith also asks, what are LTEs? So I can answer that really quick. LTEs are letters to the editor. They're like 200 to 250 words, and you submit them to a newspaper. It can be locally. It can also be a much bigger newspaper. And basically it is, we have another question rolling in too. Sorry. Okay, so you would write those and submit them to the newspaper, and then if they like it, if they think that it's something that's pertinent to and maybe another thing that they had posted about in one of their columns or something like that, or if it's something that residents care about, their readers care about, they would actually put it in their publication and it would get a lot of attention. So that's, if anyone else wants to add anything on that, that's fine. And then we have another question. As a senior member of a Franciscan parish, I am happy to see that so many under 20, oh, that's not a question. Thank you. Yeah, I'm 15.
But there is a question above that asking how somebody can get their religious community involved. And it's the same way we can get your government officials involved, right? You can, I do actually a lot of talks to religious communities of all denominations. And I give them a talk about what a Green Amendment is and how they can make a change. And it gives us the opportunity to, inform every member of that community so that they can do all the things that we're talking about today. But also a beautiful thing that a religious community can do is very often they can take a position as a community, issue their own resolution or their own letter, or sign on to our letter saying that our religious community is in support of this Green Amendment movement, or is in support of the legislation to get rid of plastics, right? So that's a way you can get involved in both of these movements, is get your religious community to bring our messages to the entire community and then urge them to act in any number of ways to advance the actions that we're talking about.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I guess my only question to you that I have left, which is not really like any of the other questions that have been asked, is how do you balance like self-care with environmental activism and the kind of sacrifices that you need to make to take personal action in environmental work? I don't know if it's not really pertinent to the exact topic at hand, but.
No, I get asked that kind of question a lot. And I guess I'm not very good at balancing. My entire life is dedicated to the environment and environmental protection. And so I don't really take time off. I might take a few hours here and there. But I really feel very, very strongly that nature and many of our human as well as non-human communities don't have a voice in this battle, in this world, in these discussions, unless there's somebody there willing to step up and give them a voice. And so I take really seriously my responsibility as the Delaware Riverkeeper here in our region, and now as the founder of the Green Amendments movement, to try to be that voice for all elements of nature and for all the people. Because I worry that in some cases, if I don't step up, nobody will step up. Or also, you know, I was watching this weekend, Eyes on the Prize. If you haven't seen it, it's a PBS documentary, and it's about the civil rights movement. It's very powerful about how civil rights leaders, not just Dr. Martin Luther King, but all of the others that were so, you know, Representative John Lewis and others, you know, how mightily they battled for civil rights. And that's really what we're doing here, right? We're battling for another kind of right, environmental rights, which should be a civil right, a human right, but isn't yet if it's not recognized in the Constitution. And yes, the leaders whose names we all recognize, they were powerful and important. But as I was watching Eyes on the Prize and each of the different episodes, what was so powerful was that movement wouldn't have had the strength that it had. It wouldn't have achieved the victories it had if not so many people individually stood up, stepped out, spoke their truth, held a sign, were part of the movement. Like there was one scene where 250,000 people turned out to Washington, D.C. as a part of a powerful demonstration of success. 250,000 people. That accumulation of people in one place at that time sent an irreplaceably powerful, important show of demand and strength and community and courage. And that these people, all colors, right? All walks of life, all ages, these people would not sit down and shut up until they got what they were demanding, civil rights and equitable treatment for all. But it took every single one of those 250,000 people to individually make the decision to show up. They didn't have to speak. They just had to be present. And that's often what it takes in any kind of successful advocacy movement or rights movement. And so that's when it comes to environmental rights, that's what we need people to do. We need you to show up. Show up by signing a letter. Show up by writing a letter to the editor. Show up by talking to your town council. When we have a rally in Trenton to call for the passage of the New Jersey Green Amendment, show up and just stand there and be present. Because it is only by all of us showing up that we will be able to make clear to our government officials that they must make change. And that's what's happening with the protests, right? Across the nation right now. And those protests aren't just about policing. They are about healthcare, and they are about education, and they are about the environment. Although they're not talking about the environment in the same way I am as a constitutional right. And that's because most of us, nobody has talked to them about the environment as not being a constitutional right, but that it should be a constitutional right like all of those other rights. But when you flip that switch for people, right, they change their dialogue, they change how they think about it, they change how they talk about it. But if we're gonna get there, we need each and every one of us to show up.
I just wanted to add real quick that it sounds like a lot of people are really interested in helping both Bye Bye Plastics Bags New Jersey and Green Amendments for the Generations. And we'll be following up with an email from both of us about information, links, and how you can start getting started on these action items. I just wanted to throw that out there in case anyone was like, where should I go? We'll be following up with that email, so you can look out for that today or tomorrow.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. I don't see any other questions in the chat, and I don't think we could top that.
There's another question in the chat
Okay.
from Vivek. He says, thank you very much for your inspiring words and work. What inspired you to begin working as an environmentalist?
Well, first off, Laura McCluskey, thank you for getting Parsippany Environmental Committee looking for a resolution. Thumbs up to you, and anybody else who said that you were going to take action. What inspired me? I mean, I really appreciate the question. It's hard for me to know. I think I grew up in a family that appreciated nature. My parents were not advocates, right? They didn't stand up and speak out on environmental issues per se, but they were people that when they saw an injustice would speak out, from somebody cutting in the line, right, to, you know, I remember a story about my mother being in the city of Philadelphia and seeing one person accost another person. It was two men, and yet my mother couldn't bear to see an injustice and inequity, and she ran across the road and she interceded. Turned out one of them had a knife. Nothing happened to my mother because she frightened him off. But it was just this idea that justice is powerful and important and people need to show up. And because I appreciated nature and spent so much time in the creek behind my backyard, in the meadow and the forest, I developed a really deep relationship with nature. And again, this realization that, you know, nature was a victim to the people who were bullying it and sacrificing it for their own benefit. And it touches me deeply to this day, and it hurts me and it makes me angry. And so I just feel a connection with nature, and I feel a connection with all the people who are being harmed by pollution and degradation. When I go out and talk with people and just hear their stories, it's heart-wrenching. And so I just feel that I need to follow my own good advice, and have always needed to follow my own good advice and show up. And sometimes that was rescuing the animal on the side of the road. And now in my adult life, it's some of that if I see that, but it's also just rising up and speaking out. So I don't really know how to explain it. It's just, I feel it powerfully and emotionally, and I think it's important. And so I do it. And when I get tired and I want to take a day off and somebody asks me to give a talk or do something, and I look at my husband, I'm like, oh boy, should I do this? And he says, yes, Maya, you have to. You have to take advantage of every single opportunity. So the other thing is, while growing up, I had parents who were supportive. Now I have a husband and kids who are supportive and who encourage me to go on even when I get a little bit tired. And I have all of you, because you all obviously care deeply. And the relationship I have with you and feeling your positive energy for each other and for the earth really energizes me.
Yeah, bravo. I feel like, I mean, I know myself, like I always cared about the environment, even as a little kid. Like when I was 4 years old, I found out where meat came from, and I was like, nope, no more meat. I'm vegetarian now. And when I read about Jane Goodall when I was like 8, I was like, yes, that's my girl. So, I mean, I feel like everyone who cares about environmentalism, or at least in my experience, has a story like that where they were brought up kind of intrinsically caring about the environment, at least in my experience. So I don't know if that holds true for everybody, but I feel like it's kind of cool that you could just be born caring about something and knowing that that's what you want to do or advocate for.
I actually think the people who are hateful towards the environment, I think that somewhere along the line in their lives, somebody disconnected them from the earth. Because I do believe all children are born with a relationship with nature and with animals and with the earth. And you see it in how children react, right, to animals of all kinds. And I think somewhere along the line, somebody severed that for them, or taught them that caring for the earth was a show of weakness rather than a show of strength. And how pathetic and sad for them. But they need to turn around.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of that. It was a really, really interesting discussion, and I think everybody in the chat agrees. Sally G says that you need to take care of yourself too, and I agree.
Thank you, Sally.
And
But I do. This is right.
But I also agree that working together like this is energizing.
Yeah.
Right. You got it.
Yeah. So I think that it's really empowering to be part of a group, and it makes all of the work worth it, especially when you know that there's other people doing it too and that you're part of a movement. So thank you all for showing up. Thank you for this. I do want to wrap it up because I actually have to run and go get on a call for a summer camp that I'm doing. So thank you so much.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for your great work. Everybody doing it everywhere. And thank you, Bye Bye Plastics. Really important, powerful message.
Yeah,
Thank you
so
very much.
Really inspiring to connect as two organizations as well.
Thank you so much, Maya.
Great job.